A single gunshot splits the pre-dawn hush, echoing across land scorched by a wildfire. No one dares mention a battered barn slumps under gathering storm clouds, as if bracing for the weight of what's coming. Footprints trace a frantic path through wet grass, leading from a crooked farmhouse down to a swollen creek. There a woman lies bound, bruised, her breath ragged against the cold air. A figure stands over her, his face shadowed by loss, his resolve etched in silent fury. In this dying corner of America, law runs thin and fear runs thick, and where fear settles, violence isn't far behind. By nightfall, that old barn will see more than storms rolling in. It will witness betrayal's final act, sealed in bullets and blood. Hope, if it exists at all, clings to the desperate vow that some things are worth protecting, even when you've lost everything else. The wind battered the crooked wooden sign of the entrance to River Pine, faded paint, spelled out the town's name. Few travelers ever noticed. The highways ran elsewhere, letting time and isolation swallow this place. Ethan Cole drove his old truck down the single-lane road. He kept one hand on the wheel, the other near the notepad by his seat. He couldn't speak. A piece of shrapnel had severed vital nerves in his neck years ago. Since then, he'd relied on gestures and brief, scribbled notes. At 38, Ethan lived alone on 40 acres of rocky farmland. 3 years back, a wildfire had torn through these woods, burning half the valley. Ethan had been a volunteer firefighter that season, right alongside his younger brother. His brother never made it out. The memory still burned deeper than the scars on Ethan's neck. A single weather-beaten barn rose against the horizon, rusted roof gleaming under the late afternoon sun. That barn was all Ethan had left of a once thriving family farm. He tended a small vegetable patch, kept 2 old horses, and raised chickens. Once in a while, he'd fix fences or do carpentry jobs for neighbors. Everyone knew he was the quiet man who'd lost his voice, and so much more. He parked next to the barn and got out, scanning the hills. The sun dipped low, turning the sky orange and red. Inside the barn, tools hung in neat rows. He grabbed a coil of wire, a hammer, and nails. A storm had knocked down a stretch of fencing near the creek. He intended to fix it before dusk. Outside, the dogs barked. He whistled not with his voice, but through pursed lips. Just a faint sound. They wagged their tails, running up to him. 2 mutts, loyal as ever, he trudged across the field. The wind carried a faint, burnt smell from the old fire-scorched pines. Even after 3 years, the charred trunks stood like black ghosts. He forced himself not to stare too long. There was no changing the past. At the creek, he noticed something odd. Footprints in the muddy bank, too small to be a man's, could be a lost hiker, but they seemed unsteady. He set his tools down and moved carefully forward. A flash of color caught his eye, a shredded sleeve tangled in brambles. He pulled it free. Female clothing, expensive fabric. The size suggested a petite figure. His heart pounded. People rarely came here. He advanced, scanning the brush. Then he saw her. A woman lay by the water, half conscious, wrists bound with rough rope. Her clothes were streaked with dirt. Bruises covered her arms. She wore one torn sneaker and had no jacket. Her dark hair clung to her face in wet strands. Ethan's dogs ran over and sniffed at her. She barely moved. He rushed up, dropping to his knees. Her lips were cracked. She tried to speak, but no sound came. He had no voice to answer. Instead, he touched her shoulder gently. Her eyes flickered open, panic lighting them for an instant. He raised his hands in a calming gesture. Slowly, he reached into his pocket for the folding knife he always carried. She flinched. He paused, meeting her gaze, wanting her to understand. Then he sliced the rope around her wrists. She sagged in relief. Her breath came shallow and fast. Ethan pointed at his throat, then gave a small shake of his head, trying to explain he couldn't speak. She blinked, uncomprehending at first, but then seemed to register. She croaked one word so faint he barely caught it. "Help?" He nodded. With careful motions, he slid his arms around her and lifted. She was lighter than he expected. She trembled against his chest. When he walked, she moaned in pain and clutched his jacket. He needed to get her warm safe. Back to the farmhouse. His footsteps splashed across the creek. The dogs followed close behind. That mile back seemed endless as the sun sank below the horizon. He felt her heartbeat flutter, felt her entire body shaking. He knew shock when he saw it. She might not survive the night if he couldn't stabilize her. In his truck, he laid her on the passenger seat, rolling up his coat as a makeshift pillow. Driving one-handed, he pressed the gas gently. The truck bumped along the dirt road. When they reached his farmhouse, he carried her inside. The living room was small, dominated by a wood-burning stove. He lowered her onto the old couch, then knelt beside it, tugging off her dirty shoes. She stared at him, eyes alert, yet fearful. He hurried to light the stove feed. Its log's warmth crept through the room. He fetched water, a blanket, and his first aid kit. She drank slow and desperate, coughing between gulps. He gave her tiny sips, patting her back. She had no obvious wounds except for bruises, rope burns, and cuts on her palms. But her face told the story. She'd been attacked, left for dead. She tried again, her voice raspy. I need to, I... He held up a hand, motioning for her to rest. She closed her eyes, tears leaking down the sides of her face. He rummaged through the closet for sweatpants and an old flannel shirt. They'd be too big, but better than those torn clothes. When he returned, she'd passed out. He gently changed her into the dry flannel, wrapping a thick blanket around her. He took the damp clothes outside, shaking off dirt and leaves. A wallet fell from the pocket of her torn jeans, and something else, a small USB drive in a plastic sleeve. He crouched in the porch light to inspect them. The wallet held a driver's license for Amelia Drake, age 28, from a city nearly 200 miles away. Inside was also a worn ID badge with her photo, CEO of Drake & Sons Realty. He recognized that name. Drake & Sons was a massive real estate conglomerate known for ruthless deals and big city developments. Last he'd heard, the company was in transition after the death of the founder. The new CEO, some rumored stepdaughter or heiress, had vanished a week ago, according to random bits of news on the battered radio in Ethan's barn. He seldom tuned in, but River Pines folks sometimes mentioned big headlines. He stared at the ID, the USB, her photograph. If this was Amelia Drake, she was more than a random victim. He glanced back inside. She slept fitfully, face etched with pain. Why was she out here, bound and left in the wilderness? He locked the door, checked the windows, then banked the fire in the stove. He set the USB in a tin box on a high shelf out of sight. Then he sat near the couch, arms folded, eyes on her. He didn't know what trouble she'd brought, but he sensed it was big. River Pine rarely saw visitors. Never a high-profile CEO, never a beaten-bound woman left to die. He dozed in the chair. Dreams of the wildfire plagued him, the roar of flames. His brother screaming, waking with a jolt, he forced down the memories. Now there was a living person who needed him. No time to dwell on ghosts. Dawn came with a pale light through the kitchen window. He checked her. She was awake, eyes scanning the room. She looked calmer, but still terrified. He waved a silent greeting, tapped his own chest, then sketched on the notepad, ETHAN. He showed it to her. She read it and managed a small nod. He wrote again. You're safe. She swallowed hard. Amelia, she whispered, voice raw. My name is Amelia. He nodded. He tapped the pad. Thirsty. She nodded, so he fetched more water, then heated a can of chicken broth on the stove. She drank it in small sips, her gaze darting around the house as if expecting men to burst in any moment. He gently touched the bruises on her wrists, showing her antibiotic cream. She let him apply it, though she winced at each touch. She finally closed her eyes again, exhaustion claiming her. Outside, the dogs barked. Ethan tensed, listening. No cars, probably just a deer crossing the yard. He turned back to her, finding something else in her torn jacket, a cell phone smashed beyond repair. Next to it, a folded piece of paper with a scribbled address that meant nothing to him. He put them aside. Mid-morning, she woke and tried to speak. I have to get out of here, she croaked. They'll come back. He wrote, Who? She trembled. I can't say, not yet. I just need to contact someone. A lawyer. Or the authorities. He showed her the shattered phone. She sagged back. Damn it, they must have tracked me somehow. She coughed. Do you have a phone or anything? He shook his head. The landline had died months ago, and he never replaced it. Service in River Pine was spotty, and he rarely had reason to call anyone. If he needed contact, he used the payphone by the post office in town, but that was an hour's drive away. She squeezed her eyes shut. Could you, please, take me there? Ethan hesitated. Driving her into town meant exposing her. If she was running from danger, could that danger follow her to Riverpine? He looked around. The old farmhouse offered minimal security, but it was quiet off any major roads. He tapped the pad again. You need rest, stay here. She tried to sit up. I appreciate your help, but I need to handle this now. People are at risk if I don't. She reached for the blanket, trying to push it aside. Her arms trembled too much, she fell back. He stood and wrote, couple days then town. She glared, but it was half-hearted. She lacked the strength to argue. Fine, she murmured, just not too long. He gave a nod. For now they had a fragile agreement. He'd keep her hidden and safe while she healed. Then they'd see. He turned to the small kitchen. He had some vegetables, eggs, maybe enough to make a simple meal. As he cracked eggs into a pan, he heard her breathing slow. She drifted off again. In the daylight, the bruises on her face looked worse. He felt anger twist inside him. Anger at whoever did this. He'd seen brutality in the war on fires, but never inflicted by humans like this. He wanted answers. But more than that, he wanted her safe. He took a notepad page and wrote a single line. Who are you running from? He left it on the coffee table, so when she next woke, she'd see it. He stepped out to feed the animals. His 2 horses trotted over, looking for oats. He poured feed into troughs, patted their flanks. This routine used to calm him. Today, the tension remained coiling in his shoulders. He decided to check the road leading to his property, see if there were fresh tire tracks. Grabbing his coat, he walked a quarter-mile to where the gravel road connected to the main route. No footprints or tire prints out of place. Good. Maybe whoever left Amelia in the creek thought she was dead. Maybe they wouldn't return. But that was a gamble. He clenched his jaw. If they did come, he'd fight. He wouldn't lose someone else. By the time he returned, Amelia was awake and reading his note. Her hands shook as she picked up the pen. She wrote one word. Family. He frowned, pointing to it. She nodded. My stepfather and the men he hires. She looked up at him. My father died last year. Stepfather took control of Drake & Sons. I was the nominal CEO, but it was a setup. He's into something big. Illegal land grabs, maybe worse, I found out. Planned to go public. Then they came. Ethan's mind raced, connecting the dots. She coughed, pressed a hand to her temple. You shouldn't be involved. I'll leave soon as I can. He shook his head, stepping toward the window. She understood it wasn't safe out there. She might not survive alone. She stared at the ceiling. There's a memory stick. With all the data. Her eyes darted to her clothes. I hid it. Did you? He opened the tin box on the high shelf, held up the USB. She sagged in relief. Don't lose that. She said, that's everything. He gave her a look. No kidding. Then he wrote, what's your stepfather's name? She swallowed. Victor Harrow. He's well-connected, more powerful than you can imagine. Ethan remembered seeing Harrow's face on the news. A polished businessman with that smooth politician's smile. That was enough to confirm Amelia's story. He set the USB back in the tin box, slid it in a kitchen drawer. You can't keep me here, she said. If they track me, they'll kill you too. He shrugged, motioning around the old house. He was used to threats, firestorms, wild animals, let them come, his gesture said. She studied him, tears forming in her eyes. You don't even know me. Why help? He tapped his throat. No voice. Then he scrawled, everyone deserves a chance. She swallowed, nodded. That afternoon, she tried to stand, testing her balance. He stayed close, ready to catch her if she fell. She was weak but determined. He found that admirable. The next few days, she mended slowly. The bruises on her face darkened, then faded. She limped around the living room, leaning on chairs. At night, she'd wake screaming from nightmares. He'd rush in, note ready, but she'd just shake her head, sobbing. He'd stand by quietly until she fell asleep again. On the second morning, he drove to the local store for supplies. He scribbled a note to the cashier, a kindly older woman named Grace Thorne who'd known him since they were kids. He asked for extra medical bandages, new clothes in approximate sizes. Grace asked if everything was okay. He nodded politely. She gave him a look but didn't pry. When he got home, Amelia was upright stirring soup he'd left on low. She had the notebook out flipping pages. She gave him a grateful smile wearing the oversized sweatshirt he'd brought. "Thanks for these," she said softly. He nodded, handing her fresh bandages. He motioned for her to sit so he could check her injuries. She hesitated, then pulled up her sleeve, letting him see the rope burns. He cleaned and applied ointment. Her eyes flicked to him. She studied his scar and the twisted lumps on his neck. "How did it happen?" she asked gently. "Your voice," he paused, uncertain if he wanted to share. But her gaze was earnest. He scribbled on the notepad. "Wildfire debris fell. Brother died. I was hit lost. Voice." She touched her mouth, tears glistening. "I'm so sorry." He nodded, blinking away his own old pain. This house held memories, not all of them good. He pulled away, finished the bandages, then stepped outside for air. The dogs rushed up, wanting attention. He scratched their ears, grateful for the unconditional loyalty. At the property's edge, he heard an engine. He crouched, peering beyond the trees. A black SUV coasted by on the main route, tinted windows out of place for river pine. He watched until it disappeared. His pulse hammered. Could be random, could be them. He hurried back inside. Amelia tensed at the look on his face. He wrote black SUV on road. She swallowed. Victor has men, they drive those. We have to move today. He frowned. She was stronger, but not fully healed. Still, he nodded. They had to risk it. Town had the payphone, or maybe Grace had a working phone behind the store. Amelia could call the lawyer or the police. He motioned for her to gather what she had. They loaded his truck with minimal supplies. He tucked the USB in his coat pocket, no sense leaving it behind. They drove off. The dogs left to guard the house. He planned to be back by nightfall. The road was rutted and Amelia clutched the seat, wincing with each bump. She watched the tree line nervously. He glanced at her, then wrote on the pad, balancing it on the steering wheel. "Who's a lawyer?" She read, took the pen. "Someone I trust, Barbara Lynn. She's ex-DA. If I can get her the evidence, she'll do the rest." He nodded, pressing the gas. They reached the single intersection that formed River Pines Main Street, a handful of old buildings, a diner, a post office, a gas pump that rarely worked. He parked near the store. Grace stood outside, broom in hand, eyebrows raising at the sight of a young woman in Ethan's passenger seat. Amelia slid out, steadying herself with the truck door. Grace approached, eyes sharp. Ethan jotted on the pad. "Need phone. Emergency." Grace gave Amelia a concerned glance. "You in trouble, honey?" she asked gently. Amelia forced a small smile. "Yes, I need to call someone. Please." Grace beckoned them inside. The store was cramped with shelves of canned goods, farm tools, feed sacks. At the back stood an ancient rotary phone. Grace dialed a code to get an outside line, then handed the receiver to Amelia. Amelia punched in a number, waited. "Barbara." "It's me," she whispered. Then she explained the situation. Her voice trembled. She gripped the receiver tight, describing the location, the USB, the men hunting her. Grace listened, arms folded, eyes flicking from Amelia to Ethan. She saw the bruises, the fear. Her expression softened. Suddenly, Amelia froze. She pressed the phone closer. "Barbara, Barbara, are you a click?" The line went dead. She hung up, hands shaking. They cut it. They're intercepting calls. She said something about, "They found me." I heard a struggle. Ethan's jaw tightened. He wrote, "We go now, a safe place." Amelia pressed her lips together. "If they got Barbara, we can't trust the city." Maybe the local sheriff. Grace cleared her throat. "Sheriff's out of town for a conference. He'll be back next week. You could try the next county or the state troopers." Amelia's gaze darted around. "We need time to plan. I can't just wander into the station. Victor's men could be there too." Ethan stepped outside, scanning the street. A black SUV cruised past, slowing a fraction. He ducked back, in heart pounding. He scribbled, "SUV here. We hide." Amelia's eyes widened. Grace looked startled. "Come upstairs," she said quickly. "I've got a room you can use." "It ain't much, but better than out here." They followed her up a narrow staircase to a small loft storage area. Dust motes floated in the sunbeams. Grace pulled aside some boxes, revealing an old cot. "You can lie low here," she offered. "I'll keep watch." She stepped away, leaving them alone. Amelia sank onto the cot, hands shaking. They must be tracking me somehow. Maybe my ID or my father's men recognized me at some point. She looked at Ethan. I'm sorry I've dragged you into a disaster. He shook his head. He handed her the notepad. She read his new message, better than doing nothing. She closed her eyes. I'm terrified, she whispered. I thought I could outsmart him. I leaked partial evidence to a reporter. Then everything fell apart. Her voice broke. I barely escaped. Ethan watched her, remembering his own past. The hopelessness he felt when the fire pinned him down, flames devouring everything. He wrote gently, "You're not alone now?" She met his eyes, tears brimming. "You saved me." A commotion downstairs made them jump. The front door banged open, footsteps heavy on the wood floor. A gruff voice demanded, "Anyone here seen a black-haired woman, late 20s? Heard she might have come this way?" Ethan and Amelia exchanged alarmed looks. Grace's voice floated up. "Only customers I had were Old Man Peters and a couple teenage boys. No one else, sir." Another voice. "We got reason to believe a missing person's been spotted in the area." Grace stood firm. "Haven't seen her." The footsteps creaked. One man stepped to the back, rummaging. Then the other man said, "We'll check next door." A moment of silence. "Ma'am, if you do see her, you call us." The door slammed. Ethan exhaled. Amelia slumped, trembling. Grace appeared, face pale. "They're gone for now," she whispered. "I think they'll be back," Amelia swallowed. "They're efficient. This is only the beginning." Ethan nodded. Writing, "Need a new plan, can't stay here." Grace twisted her broom handle. "I have a place, a hunting cabin about 15 miles outside town. It's not in my name. Belonged to my ex-husband. I never visit, so no one associates it with me. You could hide there." Amelia looked to Ethan. He gave a small nod. He wrote, "Good idea, we leave soon." Before the men came back, Grace gave him the key directions scribbled on a piece of paper. "Be careful," she said. "There's a storm rolling in." They slipped down the stairs, peering outside. No sign of the SUV. Amelia clutched Ethan's arm for support. They got in, his truck engine sputtering to life. She slouched low in the seat, hoodie pulled up to hide her face. They wound along a back road out of river pine, heading deeper into the hills. The scenery grew wild, towering pines, steep rocky inclines. The road turned to rutted dirt. Rain clouds gathered overhead, lightning flickering in the distance. Amelia stared straight ahead. "You don't even know me," she repeated softly. "But I feel safer with you than anyone in my life," before he glanced at her. His expression kind but serious. She read the unspoken acceptance there. They reached a narrow turnoff choked with brush. He followed Grace's directions, forcing the truck up a muddy slope. After half a mile, they found the cabin half hidden by trees. It was small, single-story with a sagging porch, but it had walls, a roof, and privacy. He parked behind a cluster of pines. They got out, scanning for any sign of watchers. Nothing. Amelia searched around for a generator or lights. The place was basic: a single propane lantern, an old stove. No electricity, no phone lines. Probably safer that way. Ethan cleared cobwebs, quickly checking each room. The cabin had one bedroom, a bathroom, and a main living area. Stale air hung in the corners. He opened a window, letting in fresh air. Amelia dropped onto an ancient sofa with a sigh. They shared the meager supplies they'd brought. He started a fire in the stone fireplace for warmth. Outside, thunder cracked. Amelia gazed at him across the flickering light. "I owe you more than I can say," she murmured. "You saved my life, and now you're risking yours." He shrugged, placing a pot of water near the flame to heat. He wrote on his pad, "No regrets." She stared at the words, then pressed her eyes shut. "We have to get that USB to someone we can trust. Maybe the next county sheriff or Barbara's colleagues. If she's gone, maybe one of them will help." He tapped the pen on the page, thinking, then wrote, "Wait storm out, then decide." She nodded. Her face looked drawn, tired. He offered her a threadbare blanket. She took it, shoulders slumping. She was safe for the moment, but fear shadowed her every thought. Outside, the rain started pounding the roof. Wind rattled the trees. A crack of lightning lit the windows. He moved to check them, ensuring no light leaked outside. The night pressed in, cold and unyielding. Amelia fell asleep on the sofa, exhaustion overtaking her. Ethan sat near the fire, scanning the darkness through the window. He remembered how quickly life could turn from normal to hell. The wildfire had taught him that one spark and everything burns. He pulled the USB from his coat pocket, turning it over in his hands. This small piece of plastic held enough secrets to kill, for that was the world she came from. He placed it back carefully, vowing to protect it in her. No matter what, lightning flashed again, illuminating the cabin's interior. He glimpsed her sleeping face, drawn and pale. The fear was still there, etched into her expression, but at least for now she had rest. He clenched his fists. In the morning, they'd figure out how to fight back or find help. Tonight, they hunkered down in the heart of a storm. He only hoped no one else was out there hunting them in the darkness. Hours later, near midnight, he heard a distant rumble of an engine. He killed the lantern, heart pounding. Through the rain-slick window, headlights cut across the trees. He crouched low, gesturing Amelia awake. She stirred, eyes wide. He signaled for silence. A vehicle crawled along the road, shining lights across the cabin's porch. Ethan's grip tightened on the handle of his hunting knife. The engine idled for a moment, then moved on, possibly lost, possibly searching. He and Amelia stayed silent, barely daring to breathe until the engine noise faded into the downpour. When it was gone, she exhaled shakily. She looked at him, tears brimming. He nodded, reassuring her it was all right. But inside, he felt the same dread. They knew where to look, or at least they were looking systematically. How long before they found this cabin, found them? He watched the fire's embers die. The storm raged on, but now the threat didn't just come from the weather. It came from men with black SUVs and loaded guns. Amelia slowly lay back, hugging the blanket. Tomorrow, she whispered. We find a way, we have to. He nodded, tomorrow. But he felt a chill that had nothing to do with the storm. Morning arrived with drizzle and a cold wind that rustled the pines. Amelia sat at the small wooden table, sipping instant coffee that tasted like muddy water. But it was warm. Ethan stood at the window, scanning the forest. They both remembered the headlights last night. Someone was circling. The question was, how far behind were they? Amelia had color back in her cheeks, though the bruises remained. She seemed more alert, more determined. We need a plan, she said quietly. Just hiding won't solve anything. Ethan nodded. He scribbled on the notepad. Go to next county, find sheriff or contact. She bit her lip. Yes, but that's hours away. If they're combing the region, we might run into them on the roads. She looked thoughtful. We should maybe move on foot, take back trails, avoid main roads until we reach a bigger highway. He frowned. She was still injured. Hiking through rough terrain in the rain would be dangerous. He wrote, You're not strong enough, she glared. I can walk well enough. I'm not letting them trap us. She tapped the table. We can't stay here. It's only a matter of time before they track Grace's property records or spy on her. They'll find this cabin. He couldn't argue with that. He grabbed the map Grace had given them. It showed old logging roads, footpaths through the hills. The next county seat was about 30 miles away by main roads, but maybe half that distance if they went cross-country. He let her trace a route, her finger trailing across the faint lines. She looked at him, anxiety plain in her eyes. Does that look feasible? I'm no outdoors expert. He gave a tentative nod. They'd have to navigate carefully. Watch out for steep ravines and hope the weather improved. But it was possible. He wrote, pack light, leave truck. She swallowed. We might have to. They'll spot it on the roads or track the plates. She pressed a hand to her forehead. I need to get that USB to someone with power, or it's all for nothing. He jotted evidence. Plus, witness. While we're cheering, safe. She shrugged a bitter smile. You'd think so, right? But in my world, you can buy almost anyone. My stepfather's money goes deep. We need someone absolutely clean. Maybe the state attorney. Maybe a reporter who can't be bought. He tapped the pen. She read his expression. Good luck finding that, she sighed. They spent the next hour packing. He rummaged through the cabin's store of canned goods, found a couple flares and an old hunting rifle with one box of ammo. He tested the rifle's action. Rusty but workable, Amelia watched him, arms folded. Are you sure about this? She asked. You could just hand me over. Wash your hands of it. His glare told her the answer. She didn't ask again. By mid-morning, the drizzle eased. They geared up, stashing supplies in 2 backpacks, Ethan stuffed the USB in an inner pocket carefully sealed in plastic. Amelia insisted on carrying some of the load, ignoring the pain in her ribs. They slipped out the back door, heading into the woods. The ground was wet pine needles slick underfoot. Amelia grimaced but kept pace. She'd borrowed boots from the cabin's closet, a half-size too large but better than nothing. For the first mile, they followed a narrow trail that wound uphill. Mist clung to the branches, muffling sound. The hush felt eerie, like the forest was holding its breath. Ethan glanced back often, watchful for any sign of pursuit. They reached a ridge that overlooked the valley. Charred tree stumps dotted the slope remnants of the wildfire. Amelia paused, scanning the blackened trunks. Was this? He nodded. The same fire that stole his voice and his brother's life. She exhaled. I'm sorry, he shrugged, unable to dwell. They pressed on, descending the ridge to a shallow ravine. At the bottom, a small stream rushed with fresh runoff. They hopped across stones. Amelia slipped and he caught her elbow in a firm grip. She shot him a grateful smile. Hours passed, the forest thickened the sky, a dull gray. Rain threatened again. They halted under a large pine to catch their breath. Amelia was panting, pressing a hand to her side. Ethan offered her water. She drank, wincing. How far have we gone? She asked in a strained whisper. He pulled out the map, approximated their position. Maybe 5 miles from the cabin. Another 10 to go if they wanted to reach the county line. She nodded wearily. We can do this. Slow but steady. They started again, but Ethan froze when he heard an engine echo in the distance. Through the trees, he saw a glimpse of a vehicle on a logging road parallel to them. He motioned Amelia down, flattening themselves behind a fallen log. A black SUV prowled along the muddy track. Men with rifles scanned the woods. Amelia's face turned pale. She held her breath. Ethan gripped his own rifle. Heart pounding, the SUV slowed. One man got out, stepping onto the dirt. He looked around, eyes scanning the brush. They were maybe 50 yards away, too close. Ethan prayed the man wouldn't see them. Rain started up again, pattering leaves. After a tense minute, the guy climbed back in the SUV, rolling onward. Amelia slowly exhaled. Ethan looked at her, tapping his ear to signal they needed to move quietly. They changed direction, heading deeper into the forest away from that road. The undergrowth got denser, full of thorns and mossy rocks. Their progress slowed to a crawl, but at least they were out of sight. The rain intensified. By late afternoon, they emerged onto a clearing. A dilapidated hunting shack stood near a stand of aspen trees. Ethan approached it cautiously, rifle raised. No movement inside, just a broken door, rotting floorboards. They stepped in out of the downpour. Amelia sank onto an overturned crate, shivering. We can rest here, she asked, teeth chattering. He nodded, starting a small fire in the shack's stone fireplace. Smoke trickled up through holes in the chimney. He hoped it wouldn't be too visible outside. She huddled close to the flames, warming her hands. He checked the map by lantern light. They'd gone off the planned route tomorrow. They'd have to veer east to find a safer crossing. He frowned, wondering if they even had the stamina for it. Amelia's condition worried him. She studied him. Ethan, she said, voice thin, if this gets worse, promise me you'll run. Don't stay for me. He shook his head firmly, scribbled, won't leave you. She swallowed hard, emotions dancing in her eyes. Why? I'm not your family. I'm just a stranger. His expression hardened. Family or not, he wouldn't abandon her. He'd already lost a brother to circumstances he couldn't control. He refused to lose someone else. She blinked back tears. You're a good man. Her hand trembled as she reached for the canteen. I wish more people in my life were like you. He didn't know how to answer that. Instead, he busied himself checking her injuries. Her bruises were healing, but a fresh cut on her ankle from the thorns had bled into her sock. He cleaned and wrapped it carefully. She winced, biting her lip. Night fell and the storm raged. The shack creaked. Water dripped through cracks in the roof, forming puddles on the floor. At least the fire gave them some warmth. They ate canned beans in silence. She rummaged in her backpack, pulling out the battered ID badge. She stared at her own photo, the polished CEO in a tailored suit. I was so naive, she whispered. I thought I could run the company ethically, that I could stand up to him. He tapped her sleeve. She handed him the badge. He gazed at her name, Amelia Drake, CEO. He wrote, you did stand up. She shook her head. I lost everything. My father's legacy might be in ruins, and now my lawyer's probably gone. God knows how many other people Victor's harmed. He put a hand gently on her shoulder. She closed her eyes. It's not fair, she said, tears slipping free. I wanted to do the right thing. Now people are dead or missing. I'm hiding in a shack with a man who can't speak. She gave a shaky laugh. Sorry, that sounds awful. He squeezed her shoulder lightly, understanding. She was exhausted, traumatized. The entire situation was insane, and yet here they were. They tried to sleep in shifts. He took first watch, a rifle in hand, eyes on the door. She dozed fitfully. The wind howled outside, and once he thought he heard another vehicle. But the sound faded. At dawn, they forced themselves to press on. The rain had turned to fog. Visibility was poor. They worked their way around the ridge, pushing through thick undergrowth. Amelia limped but refused to stop. After a few hours, they paused at a rocky overlook. The valley below was blanketed by mist. A narrow dirt road snaked along the base. Amelia pointed. If we can get down there, maybe we can hitch a ride with some local who isn't on Harrow's payroll. Ethan wasn't thrilled about exposing themselves, but time was running short. He wrote, risky, got to try. She nodded, steeling herself. They descended carefully, using tree roots for support. Rocks crumbled underfoot. At one point, Amelia slipped and slid a few feet, scraping her hand on sharp stones. Ethan scrambled to catch her. She gave him a pained nod, letting him help her up. When they finally reached the valley floor, the sun burned away the fog, revealing more scorched forest from the old fire. A blackened wasteland stretched for miles. Eerie, but they could see the faint outline of that dirt road beyond it. They trudged across ash and burned stumps, feeling grit in their lungs. Amelia coughed, trying to cover her mouth with her sleeve. Ethan recognized the area, the southwestern flank of the big wildfire. Memories assaulted him, flames towering overhead. His brother's screams for help. He clenched his jaw and pressed forward. Halfway across, they spotted dust clouds in the distance. A vehicle was coming along the dirt road. They ducked behind a fallen tree, hearts pounding. The engine noise approached. Then they saw it was an old battered pickup. Not an SUV. An old man sat behind the wheel, humming as he drove. Amelia glanced at Ethan. Should they reveal themselves? He nodded. They needed help or a ride. They hurried out, waving their arms. The truck skidded to a stop. The driver, an old farmer with a scruffy beard, peered at them suspiciously. You folks lost, he called. Ain't much out here but crows and rattlers. Amelia forced a smile. We got turned around hiking. Could you maybe drop us at the next town? The old man eyed her bruises, Ethan's rifle slung across his back. You in trouble, miss? She swallowed. Yes, sir, but not with the law. We just need to get to safety. He hesitated, chewing his lip, then he sighed. All right, hop in. Names Dwight, Ethan, and Amelia climbed into the bed of the truck, grateful. The old man turned around and drove east, away from the ravaged forest. The bouncing ride jarred their tired bodies, but at least they were moving faster now. Amelia hugged the backpack tight, never letting the USB out of reach. Ethan watched the horizon. The sun climbed high, dust swirling behind them. Dwight eventually pulled over near a rundown diner at a crossroads. This here's the county line, he said, leaning out the window. There's a sheriff's substation a mile that way. He pointed down a smaller side road. Amelia hopped out. Thank you, she said, voice shaky. You've been a lifesaver, Dwight nodded solemnly. I see folks in trouble sometimes. Ain't my place to judge good luck. Then he drove off, leaving them alone on the dusty shoulder. Ethan slung his pack and rifle. Amelia adjusted her jacket. They looked at the substation's direction. If it was staffed by honest deputies, they could finally get the evidence out. But if Harrow's reach extended here, it could be a trap. They walked, hearts full of cautious hope. A small white building soon appeared, a simple sign reading, County Sheriff Substation. A lone squad car sat out front, no sign of anyone else. Ethan motioned for Amelia to hang back. He approached the window, peering in. A single deputy typed on a computer. He wrote a quick note for Amelia. Stay here, I'll check. She nodded, hand on the rifle. He stepped inside. The deputy, a young man with short hair, looked up. Afternoon, he said, help you. Ethan tapped his throat, then scribbled on a slip of paper. Need to report a crime. The deputy frowned. Might want to see the sheriff in town. Ethan pointed to the phrase missing person on the note, then wrote, danger. The deputy cocked his head. Hold on. He picked up a phone, dialed, hey Sarge. Got a mute fellow here, says something about a missing person. Could be trouble. Ethan stiffened. The phone on the other end was muffled. Then the deputy froze. Yes, sir, he's alone. Wait, he has a companion outside, a woman. All right, I'll keep them here. Ethan's gut twisted. He realized the deputy was receiving instructions from someone. He tried to step away, but the deputy stood hand on his sidearm. You better wait until the sheriff arrives, the deputy said, forced calm in his tone. Ethan bolted for the door. The deputy lunged, grabbing his arm. They struggled. The deputy was younger, but Ethan had the advantage of desperation. He slammed the deputy's arm into the desk, loosening the gun. The deputy swore. Ethan wrested himself free. Scrambled out the door. Amelia saw him run and took off. Shots rang out behind them. A bullet whizzed past. The squad car's windshield shattered. They dashed around the building, hearts pounding. Another shot. They ducked behind a propane tank. Amelia's eyes were wide with panic. She clutched the rifle but had little training with firearms. Ethan motioned for her to crawl away, keeping low. She nodded, tears in her eyes. The deputy's footsteps pounded. Stop, he yelled. Another shot spat dust near them. Ethan took a chance. He darted to the side, drawing the deputy's aim. Amelia sprinted the other way, heading toward the brush beyond the station. Ethan dropped to a knee, lifted his rifle, and fired a warning shot. It kicked into the air. The deputy dove behind his car. Ethan raced after Amelia. Adrenaline pounded in his veins. They cut across a dirt lot, bullets whining overhead. The deputy was calling in backup for sure. Within minutes, more law enforcement or Harrow's men would arrive. They reached a cluster of parked vehicles at a small diner next door. Amelia, gasping, spotted an old sedan with keys in the ignition. Maybe the owner was inside. She looked at Ethan, hesitation on her face. We have no choice, she whispered. He nodded, grim. They jumped in, started the engine. It roared to life. She stomped the gas. They tore out of the lot, dust billowing. The deputy came around the corner, shooting at their tires. Sparks flew, but they managed to swerve onto the main road. Tires intact, Ethan's pulse thundered. Another stolen car, more trouble. But they had to survive. Amelia drove with trembling hands, glancing in the mirror. Sirens wailed behind them. They sped onto the highway, weaving past a few startled drivers. The siren grew louder. Up ahead, a black SUV cut across the road, blocking them. Men with rifles jumped out. Amelia cursed, jerking the wheel. They veered down a side street, tires squealing. Behind them, the patrol car and the SUV gave chase. It was a nightmare. The small county seat was bigger than Riverpine, but not large. They roared through stop signs around corners, searching for an exit. The road seemed to close in. More black vehicles joined the chase. Harrow's men or local cops on his payroll. Amelia's face was set in grim determination, tears on her cheeks. I'm sorry, she cried. I'm so sorry. Ethan shook his head, grabbing the rifle. He twisted in the seat, looking back. The black SUV was close. They collided with a row of trash cans, sending them flying. Sparks flew where metal scraped asphalt. A side alley appeared. Amelia yanked the wheel, careening into it. The sedan slammed into a chain-link fence, jolting them. Smoke hissed from under the hood. She tried reversing, but the engine died with a wheeze. Footsteps approached, voices shouting. Ethan raised his rifle. Amelia grabbed the USB from her pocket. We can't let them have it, she rasped. Then something stung Ethan's neck. A dart. He reached up, dizzy. Another dart hit Amelia's shoulder. She gasped, dropping the USB. Darkness swam in Ethan's vision. He fought it, staggering from the car. A figure loomed, wearing black tactical gear. The man knocked the rifle aside, pinned Ethan's arm behind him. Through the haze, Ethan saw the men seize Amelia, yanking her from the driver's seat. She struggled weakly, the tranquilizer taking hold. No, no, she moaned, eyes rolling back. The USB lay on the pavement. One of the men snatched it up, smiling cruelly. Found it, he barked. Ethan tried to punch or claw, but his limbs felt like lead. A second man kicked his legs out from under him. He crashed to the ground, face scraping pavement. His vision blurred. He heard them laughing. Then everything went black. He didn't know how long he was out. He swam in darkness, faint voices echoing. Then a harsh jolt woke him. He was in a dimly lit garage, hands zip-tied behind his back, ankles bound. Next to him, Amelia was tied to a chair, head lolling. Men in black, tactical outfits leaned against a table, checking the USB on a laptop. Another man, tall and broad-shouldered, wore a tailored suit. Gray hair, cruel eyes. He turned as Ethan stirred. "Well," he said in a smooth, deep voice. The silent hero wakes. Ethan recognized him from photos. Victor Harrow, Amelia's stepfather. The source of all this, Harrow, knelt studying Ethan's face with a sneer. "You cost me time and resources, hiding her out in the woods. You've been quite an inconvenience." Ethan's gaze shot to Amelia. She was semi-conscious, eyes fluttering. Harrow followed his look. "Don't worry, she'll live." For now, he rose, pacing. "Your meddling forced me to accelerate my plans. Now I have to deal with investigators, hush up entire offices." She could have made this simpler. But no, she had to be noble. One of the black-clad men handed Harrow the USB. "We've almost cracked it. She has serious encryption, but it's giving us partial files." Harrow smirked. "Good, once it's fully decrypted, we'll see exactly who she shared it with." "Tie up loose ends," Amelia groaned. "Don't do this." Harrow stepped over, lifting her chin. "You're still my daughter in a way. I'm not heartless. Confess you were mistaken. Let me handle the damage control. I might show mercy." Her lips trembled. She spat at him. He recoiled, fury flaring. A sharp backhand sent her head snapping sideways. Ethan thrashed in his bonds, rage boiling. Harrow glanced over, a cruel smile forming. "Ah, the silent night. How touching." He snapped his fingers. One goon yanked Ethan's head back, pressing a knife to his throat. "You know," Harrow drawled, "a man who can't scream is less fun to torture. But I suppose we'll make do." Amelia's eyes were wide with terror. "Stop it. He has nothing to do with this. It's me you want." Harrow scoffed. "He aided you, threatened my men, stole a vehicle. He's complicit. If not for him, you'd have died in that creek. Honestly, leaving you there was sloppy." He sighed. "We'll finish the job now." Amelia tried to lunge, tears streaming. "Kill me if you want, but leave him out of it." Harrow shook his head, placing the USB in his jacket pocket. "I'll decide after I confirm how much you've shared. If the data's contained, I can stage an accident for both of you." Another tragic story. People will mourn. The press will move on. Ethan felt the blade press harder against his throat. He tried to twist away. The goon punched him in the ribs. Pain exploded. Harrow's phone buzzed. He answered. "Yes, that's interesting." He paused, frowning. "Fine, I'll be right out." He hung up, glaring. "Stay alert. If she so much as tries to scream, gag her." "This shouldn't take long." He stepped outside. The men waited. Guns at the ready, Ethan's mind raced. He had to break free. But with his wrists and ankles bound, it seemed hopeless. He closed his eyes, focusing on controlling his breathing. Maybe they'd slip up next to him. Amelia trembled. "I'm so sorry," she whispered to him, voice quivering. "I was stupid to think I could fix this alone." He shook his head, trying to show her it wasn't her fault. She gave a weak smile. Tears falling, suddenly a phone beeped on the table. One of the men walked over, reading a text. He turned to the other, muttering, "The boss says wrap it up, start with the farmer." Ethan's pulse thundered. The second man nodded. He pulled out a pistol, screwing on a suppressor. Amelia's eyes went wide. She started to shout, but the first man shoved a rag in her mouth. She choked, gagged. Her eyes pleaded with Ethan. The goon advanced, gun leveled at Ethan's head. In that moment, time slowed. Ethan felt his heart hammering, fear knotting in his gut. The goon's finger tightened on the trigger. Then a shot rang out louder than a suppressed muzzle. The goon's head jerked, blood spraying the wall. He collapsed. The second man whirled, raising his rifle. "Another shot," he screamed, dropping to his knees. The garage door crashed open. Through the swirling dust, a figure stepped in, a shotgun aimed. The figure was Grace Thorne. She wore a grim expression, face pale, eyes locked on the wounded man. She pulled the trigger again. He fell flat. Amelia stared in shock. Grace rushed over, fumbling with a knife to cut Ethan's zip ties. "Get up quick." He stared at her, confused, but took the help. She sliced Amelia's bindings. Amelia spat out the rag, gasping, Grace, how did you... Why? Grace's hands shook, tears filling her eyes. I'm sorry, she helped Amelia to her feet. I betrayed you. I told them you were at the cabin. They paid me, said no one would get hurt if I cooperated. Amelia reeled, fury and heartbreak mixing. You sold us out. Grace nodded miserably. But I couldn't let them kill you. I followed them here, waited for my chance. She exhaled shakily. I owed Ethan for everything he's done in this town. I never intended for them to do all this. The men on the floor groaned. Grace gritted her teeth and bashed one with the shotgun's butt. Silence. Ethan rubbed his wrists. Amelia wiped her tears, glaring at Grace. She spat, you nearly got us both killed. Why now? Grace's voice broke. I realized I'd made a deal with devils. The money wasn't worth your lives. She turned away ashamed. Ethan looked at Amelia. They were both in shock. He scrawled on a piece of paper. We have to go, Harrow's still here. Amelia pocketed it, turning to Grace. Help us get out of this building, then we'll figure it out. Grace nodded. She scooped up the pistol from the dead man's hand, checking its magazine. Harrow's men are outside. I saw at least 4 more. Ethan grabbed one of the rifles. Amelia found the second pistol. She shuddered at the violence, but her eyes burned with resolve. They were cornered, outnumbered, but they had no choice. Quietly, they crept to the side door. Outside in the large yard behind the garage, men moved crates into black SUVs. One shouted orders. The sky was gray, a storm threatening again. Amelia clutched Ethan's sleeve. I need that USB, she hissed. Harrow took it. Ethan nodded. They had to get it back. Without it all, this was in vain. Grace pointed. He's probably in that SUV. She signaled to a black vehicle idling near the chain-link fence. The trunk was open, revealing black duffel bags. Harrow stood there scanning his phone. They had seconds before the men realized something was wrong. Amelia's eyes were wild, flicking from Ethan to Grace. She whispered, split up. Create a distraction. Ethan pointed to himself, then the left side of the lot. Amelia nodded, pressing her lips thin. Grace swallowed her knuckles, white on the shotgun's grip. They eased the door open. The nearest guard turned to Ethan, fired a shot, hitting him in the leg. The man collapsed, screaming. Immediately, the yard erupted in chaos. Harrow ducked behind the SUV, barking commands. Gunfire peppered the garage walls. Ethan ran for a stack of crates, bullets whizzing overhead. He shot at a second guard who dove behind a metal barrel. Sparks flew. Amelia circled around, staying low, heading for the SUV from the other side. Grace covered her, blasting at anyone who emerged. The shotgun roared, deafening in the open air. One guard dropped, clutching his torso. Harrow cursed, firing a pistol from behind the rear bumper. He caught sight of Amelia. You worthless brat, he yelled, sending bullets in her direction. She flattened herself. The tires of the SUV hissed, going flat under crossfire. Ethan advanced behind crates, exchanging fire with the last guard. The guard retreated, wounded, blood soaking his sleeve. The yard stank of gunpowder and desperation. Suddenly, Harrow lunged out, grabbed Amelia's wrist. She cried out, pistol skittering from her grip. He twisted her arm behind her back, pressing his gun to her temple. All of you, drop your weapons, he shouted. Ethan froze, heart in his throat. Grace held the shotgun, shaking. Harrow sneered. I'll blow her brains out if you don't throw those guns away. Now Amelia struggled, tears streaming. Ethan slowly lowered the rifle. Grace bit her lip, eyes flicking between Amelia and Harrow. All right, she said shakily, placing the shotgun on the ground. Harrow smirked, much better. He stepped back toward the SUV, dragging Amelia with him. I'm leaving. Anyone follows, she dies. He fumbled in his jacket for the keys, pressing them to the ignition slot on the dash. The SUV's engine sputtered, though at least one tire was flat. He cursed, scanning the yard. Another SUV sat further away. He dragged Amelia in that direction. Ethan and Grace traded panicked glances. If Harrow left with her, it was over. The USB, the evidence, Amelia's life all gone. They had to do something. Grace inhaled, tears in her eyes. She mouthed, I'm sorry to Ethan. Then she snatched a handgun from a fallen guard. She charged forward, ignoring the bullets Harrow fired. One slug caught her in the shoulder. She stumbled but kept going, screaming in pain. She threw herself at Harrow's arm, forcing it upward. The shot went wild, missing Amelia's head. Ethan seized his chance. He dove for the rifle, aimed, and squeezed the trigger. Harrow jerked the bullet, tearing through his side. He roared, dropping the pistol. Amelia yanked free, staggering away. Grace collapsed to her knees, blood streaming from her wound. Harrow clutched his side eyes, blazing with hatred. Amelia snatched up her fallen pistol and aimed it at him, hands shaking. She stared at the man who had hunted her like an animal. He sneered, blood trickling down his chin. "You think this stops anything? The company is mine. The political connections are mine. I can pay my way out of any court in this country." Amelia's eyes burned. She advanced, pressing the barrel to his chest. "Not anymore," she whispered, tears running down her cheeks. "I'll make sure the world knows everything." She reached into his jacket pocket, found the USB. Relief flooded her face. Harrow glared at her. "Go on, then kill me if you want. You don't have the guts." She trembled, struggling to keep the gun steady. Memories of him raising her after her father died. Memories of the day he first announced the big expansions. She realized it was all built on greed. She gritted her teeth, finger tightening on the trigger, but she lowered the pistol. "You'll face justice," she muttered. "Behind bars." Ethan rushed to Grace, cradling her head. She was pale, fighting for breath. "I'm sorry," she gasped, tears running. "I thought they wouldn't hurt you, but I was wrong. Let me make this right." Her breathing hitched. Ethan pressed on her shoulder wound. Amelia hurried over, rummaging for bandages. They tried to stanch the bleeding. Grace coughed, lips flecked with blood. "Take care of each other," she whispered, eyes distant. Then she went limp. Amelia sobbed, checking for a pulse. Ethan closed his eyes, trembling. Grace was gone. Harrow lay there, bleeding. The remaining guard was unconscious or dying. The yard was a battlefield of broken crates and bullet casings. Amelia pressed the USB into Ethan's hand. "She saved us," she said, voice raw. "At the end, she saved us." He bowed his head, tears slipping free. So much loss, so much blood, but at least it wasn't all in vain. Amelia grabbed the pistol again, leveling it at Harrow. She knelt, tying his wrist with a zip tie. He winced. "It's over," she said flatly. "And if it isn't, I'll make sure you never see the light of day again." They both looked around. Numb sirens grew in the distance. Maybe real police. Maybe more corrupt ones. Amelia rose, holding Ethan's hand. "We can't run forever," she said. "Let's face this. We have evidence. We have the truth." He nodded. They had each other. That would have to be enough. They stumbled out of the garage, Harrow bound and limping. Rain poured anew, washing blood into the puddles. A cluster of official cars screeched to a halt. Uniformed men jumped out. Weapons raised for a moment. Ethan tensed, fearing another ambush. Then a strong voice shouted, "Drop your weapons, hands up." Amelia recognized the state trooper insignia, real law enforcement, not the dirty local deputy. She carefully set the pistol down, hands raised. Ethan did the same. Harrow cursed, trying to stand upright, tethered wrists making it awkward. Two troopers pinned him to the ground, searching him for additional weapons. Another trooper approached Amelia, checking her bruises. "Ma'am, we got a tip from a federal contact about an armed kidnapping in the area. Are you okay?" She nodded shakily. "This man is Victor Harrow. He orchestrated everything. We have proof." She held up the USB. Her arms trembled. A senior officer with a lined face and silver hair stepped forward. "My name is Captain Reed. We're aware of a corporate corruption investigation involving Drake and Sons. Are you Ms. Amelia Drake?" She managed a nod. "He tried to kill me. He's behind it all. You have to keep him secure." She pointed. "His men are inside." Captain Reed signaled his troopers to sweep the buildings. They found the bodies and wounded men. Paramedics arrived, hauling stretchers. Ethan stared as they gently lifted Grace's covered form, placing her into an ambulance. The guilt weighed heavy in his chest. They took statements. Amelia told the entire story. The troopers listened, grim-faced. One of them tested the USB on a secured laptop, confirming the presence of damning files. Captain Reed called in for federal backup, referencing something about a multi-state operation. At the edge of the chaos, Ethan stood silent. One paramedic tried to check his injuries, but he waved them off. He was battered and bruised, but not critical. Amelia, on the other hand, needed her ribs taped. She sat on the back of a trooper's vehicle, letting them patch her up. Harrow was loaded onto a stretcher, cursing them all. "I'll have your badges," he roared. "You think she can prove anything? I'll sue this entire department into bankruptcy." The troopers secured him, ignoring his threats. One radioed for immediate prisoner transport. Amelia locked eyes with Harrow one last time, 1,000 emotions swirling. He sneered, but behind that was fear. She realized his power was slipping away. For once, he wasn't in control. The troopers roped off the scene, escorting Ethan and Amelia to a safer area. Captain Reed demanded an official statement. Amelia recounted every detail, from discovering the incriminating documents to being attacked and left for dead. She described Ethan finding her, their flight through the woods, the betrayal by Grace, and the final confrontation. Reed listened intently, scribbling notes. "We've had rumors of corruption in the local sheriff's department. He said your father's case was overshadowed by Harrow's influence. Now we might have enough evidence to act." He glanced at Ethan. "Mr. Cole, is that correct? I understand you can't speak." Ethan nodded. Reed handed him a form. Ethan wrote his account, short sentences, shaky hand. When he finished, Reed exhaled. "Thank you. We'll place Miss Drake under protective custody while we coordinate with the DA's office. We can arrange the same for you if you want." Ethan looked at Amelia. She stared at him, uncertain. A part of her clearly wanted them to stay together, but the official process might separate them. They had to ensure the documents got into the right hands. Her voice was soft. "He saved my life more than once. I'd feel safer if we could stay near each other until this is over." Reed nodded. "We'll do our best. For now, we'll transport you to a secure medical facility, then formal debriefing. After that, the DA will want to see you in person. The FBI might also be involved." Amelia's shoulders slumped. She looked exhausted. "All right, just keep us both safe." A paramedic insisted on checking Ethan again, patching a cut on his temple. He winced, remembering the blow that knocked him out. The adrenaline was wearing off, leaving aches everywhere. Soon they were taken by separate ambulances to a nearby hospital. On the ride, Ethan couldn't help replaying the scene. Grace's final act, Harrow's arrogant sneer, Amelia's tear-streaked face. The despair felt overwhelming, but at least they were alive. In the hospital, a blur of doctors and nurses fussed over them. Ethan received stitches on his temple, bandages for bruised ribs. Amelia had x-rays confirming bruised ribs, no fracture. They were each assigned a police guard outside the door. Days passed in a haze. Investigators came, took statements, tested the data on the USB. The news exploded with headlines about real estate titan, linked to organized crime, and missing CEO found alive. Amelia's photo splashed across every channel. Ethan's name was mentioned as the silent farmer who saved her. He hated the attention. They were kept in separate rooms. She'd send notes via a nurse or guard checking on him. He wrote back, reassuring her. Each day more details emerged. Harrow's network of dirty cops and officials, the infiltration of Drake and Sons. Even hints of a cartel link. The FBI arrived. Agents offered witness protection for Amelia. She demanded the same for Ethan. The agents seemed open, but non-committal. One evening, after the hospital had quieted, the nurse let Amelia slip into Ethan's room. She had an IV band still taped to her arm. He sat in bed, scribbling on a notepad. She sat on the edge of the bed, holding his hand. "They want me to testify before a grand jury," she said, voice trembling. "The data is enough for major indictments, but my testimony seals it." Harrow's fighting back with every trick. "But they say he'll likely go down." Ethan nodded, squeezing her hand gently. She saw worry in his eyes. She touched his bandaged neck. "They also offered me witness protection," she murmured, "a new identity. The FBI claims Harrow's associates might target me for revenge, but I can't imagine starting all over somewhere else. I'd lose everything, my name, my father's memory." He wrote safety first. She read it, tears welling. "What about you?" he shrugged. Another line. "I'd go anywhere you need." She pressed her lips tight. "You've done so much. I can't ask you to throw away your life, your farm, your home." He thought of the lonely fields, the half-rebuilt fences, the barn. A pang of regret stirred. That land was all he had left of his family. But if she was forced to vanish, would he cling to an empty farm? She saw his conflict. "I don't want you to lose your farm," she whispered. "But I don't want to vanish either. Maybe we can stand our ground. Let the system protect us." He hesitated. He'd never put much faith in the system. But these days that system seemed to be working at least partially. He wrote, "We decide together." She nodded, leaning her forehead against his. In that silent closeness, a bond formed stronger than any words. A week later, the DA's office arranged a secure hearing. Amelia testified behind closed doors. Ethan stayed by her side, scribbling clarifications when needed. The evidence was overwhelming. Harrow's connections tried to stall, but the FBI kept piling on charges. Outside the courtroom, a throng of reporters waited. Camera flashes erupted as Amelia emerged, flanked by agents. She kept her head high, ignoring shouted questions. Ethan followed behind, feeling awkward in borrowed dress clothes. More cameras turned his way, snapping pictures. Agents hurried them into a waiting SUV. Once inside, Amelia exhaled. "That was brutal," she murmured. "But it's done. The indictments are filed. He'll have his day in court." She rubbed her arms. "They say he can't post bail." Too big a flight risk. Ethan gave her a small smile. She'd fought so hard, now came the uncertain future. The SUV took them to a safe house, a modest suburban home with security detail. They were told to remain there until the next hearing. In that quiet house, they tried to adjust. Agents sat outside, rotating shifts. Amelia stared out windows, restless. Ethan saw her struggles, tried comforting her with small gestures, cooking simple meals, writing her notes. She told him about Drake and Sons, how she planned to reorganize it, remove corruption, rebuild her father's honest intentions. He wrote, "You want to stay?" CEO. She hesitated. "I'm not sure. That name is tainted now, thanks to Harrow. But it's still my family legacy. Maybe I can do real good with it. Like farmland, preservation, ethical projects." He nodded. That sparked an idea in his heart. Maybe the farm he had could become a pilot project, a sign of real sustainable work. He wrote, "Rebuild Riverpine." She smiled, remembering the dusty roads. Yes, people like Grace. She stopped, tears threatening. She composed herself. They shouldn't be forced to betray neighbors for money. We can bring jobs, resources, hope. They clung to that dream through the next weeks. Harrow tried every legal trick, but the FBI uncovered deeper crimes. Meanwhile, Amelia met with the board of Drake and Sons with federal agents on hand. Some executives cooperated, revealing expansions funded by shady deals. The next hearing was set for 4 months away. Until then, they lived under guard, forging a new closeness. She helped him regain some mobility with physical therapy on his old injuries. He taught her small bits of sign language that the speech therapist had shown him years ago. They walked the neighborhood under agent escort, dreaming of a freer life. Days turned into weeks, and the reality of witness protection loomed again. The FBI said there were still threats. Harrow's affiliates might retaliate. One agent told them bluntly, "We can't ensure your safety. If you return to that farm, you'd be isolated." Vulnerable, Amelia refused to budge. "That farm is his home. He saved my life. I'm not dragging him into hiding." She gave Ethan a determined look. "We'll find a way." He nodded, though inside he wondered if it was stubborn pride. He wrote, "People worth trusting will stand with us." She held that note close, reading it often. Eventually, the FBI placed them in a partial protection arrangement. They could return to Riverpine provided they install certain security measures, a new gate cameras, a direct phone line to the local state trooper post. The old sheriff had been arrested in the scandal. Agents would do random checks. They agreed to an alarm system. It felt intrusive, but it was freedom compared to the safe house. One bright morning, they drove up that familiar dirt road to Ethan's farmhouse. Weeds covered the driveway. The barn stood silent. Amelia stepped out, inhaling the crisp air. "It's so quiet," she whispered, tears in her eyes. He walked around, seeing the place with fresh eyes. It was still battered, worn, but it was home. She turned to him, smiling. "We can fix it up. Expand. Maybe raise some animals. I can get a satellite connection for calls." He nodded, heart lifting. This wasn't an end. It was a new start. They fell into a routine. He patched fences while she researched farmland preservation grants. Slowly, the property started looking alive again. She'd stand in the field, phone pressed to her ear, speaking with lawyers, corporate boards. Meanwhile, Ethan hammered boards into place, the dogs running around happily. The press tried to find them, but the state troopers kept them at bay. Some folks in town still whispered about Grace's betrayal and final sacrifice. The memory weighed on them both. Amelia visited Grace's grave in the small churchyard, leaving flowers. She whispered apologies and thanks. Ethan stood beside her, silent, tears falling. They formed new friendships with honest officials, lawyers, and small organizations that wanted to help revive Riverpine. Slowly, word spread that Drake and Sons, under new leadership, was investing in ethical local projects. They set up a program to rebuild farmland, lost to the wildfire, employing local hands. It felt good to do something positive, Ethan scrawled on a notepad one evening. Grace would be proud. Amelia read it, tears brimming. "I hope so," she whispered. "I really do." 2 months after returning, the FBI gave them an update. Harrow's trial date was set. The evidence was ironclad. Amelia was the star witness. They wanted Ethan, too, to confirm the kidnapping. He agreed, though the idea of a city courtroom made him uneasy. The morning of the trial, they traveled under escort. Cameras were everywhere outside the courthouse. They walked in together, side by side, ignoring the shouts. Inside, the atmosphere was tense. Harrow sat in a defendant's chair, glowering. His once expensive suit hung looser, now a sign of his time in custody. Amelia took the stand. She spoke clearly about her stepfather's crimes, about the attempt on her life, the chase through Riverpine, Grace's betrayal and redemption. She didn't flinch from the details. When the prosecutor showed the USB evidence, Harrow's face paled. He tried to sneer, but the weight of proof was crushing. Then it was Ethan's turn. The prosecutor asked him yes-no questions, and he responded by writing or nodding. The jury watched closely. His presence, the man who rescued Amelia at the creek, sealed the emotional impact. He'd lost his voice to a fire. He wouldn't lose his integrity now. Harrow's defense team tried to discredit them. The lawyer claimed Amelia had orchestrated everything for control of the company, claimed Ethan was a violent vigilante. The jury seemed unimpressed. By late afternoon, the arguments wrapped. Harrow glared at Amelia as he was led away. The verdict wouldn't come for another day or two, but the prosecution was confident. Outside, Amelia exhaled. "We did it," she whispered. "No matter what he tries, I think we've done enough to lock him away." Ethan squeezed her hand. Her eyes sparkled. Relief mingled with sadness for all they'd endured. They returned to the farmhouse, waiting for news. When the guilty verdict came, an FBI agent called, congratulating them. Harrow faced decades in prison. The agent warned that some associates were still at large, but the biggest threat was neutralized. That evening, Amelia and Ethan sat on the porch, watching dusk settle over the fields. The old oak tree behind the barn had started budding again, life returning to blackened limbs. She leaned her head on his shoulder. "Thank you," she said softly, "for everything." He patted her hand, unable to form the words he wanted. He grabbed the notepad, wrote a single line. "I'm glad you lived," she smiled, eyes shining. "Me too." She whispered, tears gathering. Then she slowly, gently pressed her lips to his. It was awkward, tender, filled with gratitude and longing. In the stillness of that moment, the future stretched before them. Over the coming months, the farm thrived. Amelia poured resources into building a real sustainable operation. She convinced the Drake and Sons board to sponsor local reforestation, hire labor from Riverpine, and fund a small community center. Slowly, neighbors came around. The tension eased. Ethan learned to accept help. He taught Amelia how to mend fences, how to feed chickens, how to rotate crops. She taught him about corporate structures, how to navigate bureaucracy. They formed a partnership, two wounded souls forging hope together. On the anniversary of their first meeting, they walked the creek bank where Ethan had found her. She wore boots this time, stepping carefully over stones. The rope marks on her wrists were gone, replaced by faint scars. She looked at him, tears in her eyes. "That day I thought I was dead," she said, "but you gave me life, a new one." He cupped her face in his hands, stroking away a tear. She leaned in, letting the silence hold them. In that hush, they shared more than words ever could. They returned to the farmhouse for a quiet dinner. The lights glowed warm, the old stove crackling. She rummaged in a drawer and pulled out an envelope. "I've been meaning to show you this," she said, handing it to him. Inside was a deed transfer. She'd placed the farmland under a joint trust between them, protected from any future corporate buyouts or unscrupulous deals. "No one can force you to sell now," she whispered. "Not even me." He stared at the paper, stunned. Then he wrote why she shrugged. "Because this is our land, our future. And I love you." His breath caught, her words echoed in the quiet kitchen. He stepped closer, pressing his forehead to hers. He squeezed her hands, heart pounding. Then he wrote on the pad, hands shaking, "I love you too." She laughed through her tears, hugging him. In the background, the dogs barked happily, as if sensing the joy. The next day they strolled through the fields under a wide blue sky. The air smelled of fresh earth, a promise of growth. The dogs ran ahead, chasing birds. Amelia slipped her hand into Ethan's. He gazed at her, silent but radiant. They both knew life wouldn't be perfect. There were more obstacles, more expansions at Drake and Sons to handle possible threats from Harrow's associates. But they had each other, a community rising from the ashes, and hope in the land they nurtured. In the distance, charred pine stumps dotted the horizon, a memory of devastation. Yet green shoots were springing up around them. Wildflowers found root in blackened soil. Renewal happened slowly but relentlessly. That was their story too. Broken but healing, scarred but alive. They walked on side by side, forging a future that balanced two worlds, the high-stakes corporate realm and the humble farmland that had once felt so lonely. Now it felt like home for them both. He came here alone once upon a time, angry at the world, silent from wounds no words could mend. She arrived broken by betrayal, certain the land would swallow her whole. Their paths crossed on scorched soil that had seen fire and ashes, tears, and regret. Yet over weeks of danger and doubt, they discovered a fragile bond built on quiet gestures and unspoken promises. In the end, the threat they faced demanded more than courage. It required sacrifice. A friend lost her life, a betrayed bloodline broke, and every bullet spent weighed heavier than the last. But where loss threatened to hollow them out, hope quietly took root. Not the kind of hope etched in neon lights or corporate slogans, but the simple faith of two people stepping into a future neither expected to find. Now the fields are greening once again. The old fences stand a little straighter. The roads feel safer, though memories of gunfire linger. Silence still burdens him. Echoes of heartbreak still haunt her. Yet in the slow rhythm of rebuilding, they've found a home worth defending. In a land once scarred by flames, how far would you go to save what remains and find something worth living for in the quiet aftermath?